All right, so we're continuing with the Sefer Yehושע, Parak Aleph Pasuk Ches, and I just want to wrap up a couple of Zachim. And we're going to touch on some stuff that we spoke last week, but we're hopefully going to get onto some newer things as well. So the Pasuk says, "Layomer Sefer HaTorah Hazem Yipicha V'Gisa B'Yom V'Layla, L'man Tishma L'Ases K'Chala Kosa Bo Kios Ttzliach Es Dרכך V'Os Tashkil." So we're going to focus more on the second part of the Pasuk of Kios Ttzliach Es Dרכך V'Os Tashkil. What does that mean? So Tashkil, in the previous pasuk, Rashi says Tashkil means Tatzliach. So Os Tatzliach Es Dרכך V'Os Tashkil, that's a little problematic, right? But it's interesting, if you look at the Targum says, Arei B'chein Tatzlach Yes Darkoch B'chein Tachshot. I don't know exactly how you would type that, but to me it sounds like the word Tachshit. Tachshit is a jewel. And we'll see in a second what kind of jewel we're talking about over here. The Radak says Tatzliach v'omar Tatzliach shu poil yotze ve'af al pi she'ein ha'atzlocha b'yad ha'odam. Hatzlocha is not b'yad ha'odam. Pirush ki b'shomer mitzvahs Hashem b'scharim tavei lo ha'atzlocha. When a person does the mitzvahs Hashem, the schar of the mitzvahs is that it'll have hatzlocha. Harehu ki ilu matzliach darka. It's as if he is doing something to cause himself to be matzliach. Now he's really not doing anything to be matzliach. It's really all coming from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Oyiyah tatzliach poil oimed v'yiyah es dרכך k'may b'dרכך v'oz taskil zeh targum yonusin tachshit l'fishu karvel tatzliach shalei lich b'las haloshen hu karvel inyan hatzlocha. Taskil is the inyan that's karvel inyan hatzlocha, not exactly, but the Malbim says it a little bit maybe clearer, maybe he's saying something else. So the Malbim says ki oz tatzliach yesh hevdel ben hatzlocha v'haskola. There's a difference between hatzlocha and haskola. Haboicher tamid b'emtsoyim tovim, a person who chooses, the right vehicles. Hamavilim al tachlis hanirtze al yidei sichlei tzv'nasei nikra maskil. A person who makes smart choices to get to a specific goal, that person is called a maskil, right? What we call maskilim are the people that don't learn Torah, or that use science to back up Torah, or Torah to back up science, and they get it all confused, right? But over here in the Lashon HaPasuk, the seichel of a mensch is when a person is gebencht with a gewisse seichel, and he's able to understand things on his own, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Misha mazalei oimed lo, a person who has good mazel, asher yazig atachlis hanirtza esloi tamid b'mikra nikra matzliach. Guy wins the lottery 3 times in a row, he has hatzlacha, right? A guy who works and makes a lot of money, that's taskil, that's not hatzlacha. Hatzlacha means it's b'mikra. It happens. It so happens that he won the lottery. He didn't do anything more than just go and buy a lottery ticket. He doesn't know any cheshbainis. A guy who makes cheshbainis, that's called taskil. A guy who does everything without a cheshbon, that's called tatzliach. V'hamaskil yesh le seichel chad v'chorif. He's very sharp mind. Livchar tamid adarcha karvel hamavukish. He knows the shortest way, the best way, the smartest way. He has an eitzah, he has a mahalach, he has an agenda of how he's going to reach his goal. Mashenken tatzliach is, I don't know, a guy bought a house and he's digging in the basement and he finds $1 million. He's rich. His house was $10,000. It was garnished. It was nothing. He doesn't have money. Now he has money. Punkt. He landed a hatzlacha. Right? So when you wish somebody hatzlacha rabba, it means that $1 million should land on his head. You never wish anybody you should have a lot of haskola. It doesn't sound right? Haskola meaning the haskola of the 17th and 1800s. Right? The stars will align. It's interesting. That's the expression in English, that all the stars align. So he has a mazel, matzliach, u'maracha toiva, and it's all working in his favor. V'amar al yidei limud HaTorah tatzliach. So al yidei limud HaTorah he'll have hatzlacha. Ki Hashem yahavech mazlecha l'toiva tamid. You're constantly learning and you're learning Torah, so Hashem is going to turn everything in your favor. It's going to not be $1 landing on your head, but every day another dollar will land on your head. Eventually you'll have a lot of money. That does not mean that you'll be matzliach in Gashmis, or means to be matzliach in Ruchnis. V'gam taskil al yidei haseichel livchar b'tayv. Taskil means you learn, you understand, you know what to do. There's a cheshbon, what you could do. Tatzliach is bidei shemayim, and taskil is bidei odam. What you could do with your seichel. V'gam tatzliach b'inyanim ha'elamiyim, v'taskil b'inyanim ha'nafshiyim. Tatzliach is going on this worldly things, and taskil is in the spiritual realm, understanding how to get to the goal in the spiritual realm. It's interesting. So what's HaKadosh Baruch Hu telling him in this pasuk, and what's this pasuk saying? So he tells him, "Lo yomer sefer HaTorah zemipicha v'gisu b'yom v'layla." Now remember, he's fighting a war. A war needs a lot of strategies, and it takes a lot of seichel. But this war is going to be fought mostly with hatzlacha, not with seichel. As much seichel as you're going to have, right? You have to do your best. You try your best, and Hashem will do the rest, right? That's a classic kid saying, but that's what we're saying over here. Yeshua just had to do the minimal hishtadlus in a certain life, and if you want to look at it that way, and then HaKadosh Baruch Hu will take him v'oz Tצליח, v'oz Tשכיל. That's interesting because the tachshit that we're saying is the Tשכיl is the tachshit, not the hatzlacha. Meaning your hard work. That's really the concept of Tשכיl, the product of your labor. So there's a couple of gemaras that all line up with this, and it's very to make this very interesting. First, we have a gemara in Avodah Zarah. The gemara says that somebody's Isaac B'Torah properly. So then, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. This is Avodah Zarah Yud Testament base. Davar Zeh Kosav B'Torah. This is written in the Torah Shani B'Navim, repeated in the Navim. Mashalosh B'Ksuvim, and the third time mentioned in the Ksuvim. Kol Isaac B'Torah Nechasim Matzlichin. Anyone who's Isaac B'Torah is Nechasim have Hatzlacha. The Girsas Hagra is Derachav Matzlichin. His Derachim are Matzliach. Just interesting because the Rosh Tevis of Lo Yomer Sefer HaTorah Hazemi Picha is Rosh Tevis Mesila, which means a path. I didn't see anybody saying this. It just landed. Literally, I had Hatzlacha with this verse a few minutes ago. And it's Kosav B'Torah. The Chsiv, the pasuk says, "Ushmartem es divrei habris hazois v'asisem ma'isem l'man taskilu es kol asher ta'asu." That's a pasuk in Chumash. Benavim, the Shani Benavim, it's repeated in the Nevi'im. It says, "L'yomer sefer HaTorah zemi picha v'gisu b'yom v'ladol l'mantish v'las es kol kosaboy goes Tצליח es דרכך goes Tשכיל." Mishlosh b'Ksuvim, it's mentioned the third time in the Ksuvim, in the beginning of Tilim. And v'chol asher yasa yatzliach, so anything that he'll do will have hatzlacha. Mela, according to the Radak in the Malbim, so the pshat is that there's a chiluk between Tצליח and Tשכיל. The Tצליח is not totally in the Ishtadlus and in the Maisa of the Adam, and Tשכיl sounds like it's a ruchnistic gezach, but it's totally in the Ishtadlus of the Mensch. So we can understand this with the Gemara. Another Gemara that brings our pasuk. We could just all, squish them all together. It's famous Gemara. Everyone knows it. Brachas Daf Lamed Hem base. Tanu Rabban Vasata de Ganach. We say it in Shema every day. Hanek ben Minik Derech Eretz Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Shimon Chayomer. Efsher Odom Charish B'Shas Kriches. Re'eb Shazriya. V'Karitim B'Shas Ktira. A person's taking care of all kinds of physical labor and all kinds of physical things. And it's interesting because the mitzvahs had Tluyas Ba'aretz. All the people that are busy planting, plowing. Yeah, Torah matahei alav. That's what time is the Torah. It's a shal the hel gezach. We're gonna get to that soon. We're gonna the next psukim in pasuk Yud Yud Aleph. We're gonna talk about all kinds of madregas, kedushas aretz, and here we're saying that Reb Shimon doesn't like this business of the people busy digging the land. You gotta get involved in Torah. V'zera b'shas haruach Torah matahei alav. What's that time at the Torah? Zok the Gemara. Zok Reb Shimon b'Yechai b'zman. When Klal Yisrael is doing the right thing, they're doing Retain Shalmak, and the Malacha is done by the other people. Meaning Hashem arranges Siyata Deshmaya that they don't have to work too much. And strangers will get up and they'll take care of your sheep. And when Klal Yisrael is not doing the Ratan Hashem, then they have to be Mevatel Torah in order to take care of their work. You have to go out and gather together your grain. Not only that, but you have to take responsibility for others as well. I mean, you're going to be so busy taking care of things, and could you just watch my sheep? I got to go daven mincha, right? And then by mincha you have to, and you have to go daven mincha, and then you're going to end up being busy with all kinds of other responsibilities that are not yours. It's going to come to a point if you're not shemer the Torah properly, if you're not Isaac B'Torah properly, that you'll end up serving your enemies also. Omer Abaya, Sabaya says, Harbi also Rabbi Shmuel will also be Yodon. Rabbi Shimon ben Yechai will also be Yodon. He said many people tried like Rabbi Shmuel, it worked out for them. It was also be Yodon, I mean they had Hatzlacha with it, and Rabbi Shimon ben Yechai it didn't work for them. So there's a famous Sam Sefer that explains what's the pshat if you ate everything Rav Shimon Bar Yochai ate for breakfast and you put all the ingredients in for Rav Shimon Bar Yochai, what's pshat? That at the end of the day, most people did like Rav Shimon Bar Yochai and it didn't work for them. Yeah? So what's the Lashon of the Gemara? The Lashon of the Gemara is Harbe also Kir Rav Shimon Bar Yochai. They did like Rav Shimon Bar Yochai. You're not Rav Shimon Bar Yochai, so what does it help you? Right? If you're Rav Shimon Bar Yochai, then you could do his recipe and it works for you. You know, don't look at Yanim. Right? Harbe also Kir Rav Shimon Bar Yochai. But they were not Rav Shimon Bar Yochai, they weren't holding on the Madregas. So, you know, what happens is when you skip Madregas, you know, you usually don't get too far. If you get anywhere at all. And really, we know from this Gemara that this is the Madrega of Teras Umamnasam, the Madrega of Rav Shimon Bar Yochai, that he didn't even have to daven, all he had to do was say Krishma, because you saw Rangetan and learning that there was nothing else in his world besides the Torah. Mamela, you know, that we know the Gemara says, and it's not a Gemara, it's a Mechilta, that says that Lenitna Torah Elo Loichle Haman, that the Torah was only given to those who ate the man. I mean, these were the people that put all their kaiches, everything they had into it. Mamela, that's why they were able to get to the madregas that they got to. Fine, that's point number one. Point number two, we have Medrash and Vayikra Rabbah Lamed Hey Zayin. The state does a Halamed Amanas Lasois, a person who learns Amanas to be Mekayim the mitzvahs. Zeicha la hakbil ruach hakodesh. He's zeicha to a madrega of ruach hakodesh. Now we could talk a little bit about what ruach hakodesh is exactly. Matam, but what's pshat? Meaning, what's pshat that a person who's lemed amanas lasis is zeicha to ruach hakodesh? Because the pasuk says, "Man tishmar lasis gekol hakosaboy ki os tazliach es derachecha, be'oz tazkil, ve'in tazkil el ruach hakodesh." Tazkil is ruach hakodesh. Now we said before that tazkil means it's the avodah the kaiches that you put in. That's when you're going to be Zeichet Ruach HaKodesh. This guy that woke up one day had Ruach HaKodesh, just beautiful. Right? We spoke about that the other week, that we said that the Pshat, the Bnei Sascha said that a Navi, a person's Bal Madrega, doesn't come close to the person that's Osik B'Torah. Meaning, if you have your Egen Cheshbainis and you have your Egen Zachen, it's all very nice, but that's not what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants. But the Pshat is Azai. The Ein Taskil El Ruach HaKodesh, the pshat is that with your Esek HaTorah, with your Taskil, you could get to Ruach HaKodesh, K'mei Omar, like the pasuk says, Maskil Eisan HaEzrachi. That Eisan HaEzrachi was Maskil, that he was able to have, and that's Kolor Ruach HaKodesh over there. And the Bar Moshe explains that when a person learns Torah properly, and he connects himself to the Torah, and he puts all his kaiches into it, he's zeichet to Ruach HaKodesh, which means that HaKadosh Baruch Hu helps him and is mashpia of Shefa Kodesh on him, and he's able to understand the Torah la'amitam. He's able to understand the Torah with the klarkite, with the brirus, with the complete understanding. And he brings a lashon of Gemara, and he says, "Hu amal b'makom zeh v'terasa emelas b'makom acher." He's working to try to understand this sugi over here, but people are shayleitza by him, and he's able to see things. He's able to see things from one side of the world to the other. He's able to understand murder gezachen in the Welt. People could be shayleitza in business, in medicine, and he knows because HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives a tremendous shefa of hatzlacha to him, of sichlius, that he's able to understand the darkei olam with the ruchnis de gekuk, in a sense, to give him the right to be able to be madrich to people. And there's another medrash in the Tanchuma that says, it brings a pasuk in Eov that says, "Le'rabim yachkumu uzkeinim yavinu mishpat." Not too many people are too smart, and the zkeinim they'll understand the mishpat. Lo kol mishu eisik b'Torah mischakim. Not everyone that's eisik b'Torah becomes a chacham. Ela'ochen ruach hu be'enreish. There's a certain ruach that's a siyata d'shmaya from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Elam keinosan by HaKadosh Baruch Hu ruach k'dei she'ei rogel b'talmudai. Says only if HaKadosh Baruch Hu picks on you to be the masmid, that you'll be the masmid. Only if HaKadosh Baruch Hu picks on you to be the Balkishran, you're going to be the Balkishran. It's not muchach, just because you're sitting and learning, that you're going to end up being a Ramosha Feinstein or Yashav. It doesn't work like that. It's getting right? So which is a very interesting thing, because technically speaking, we all should sit and learn. We should all do what we have to do, right? But at the end of the day, this measure seems to be saying not like that. Now it could mean, we do know the Gemara says that 1,000 nichnasim l'limud and echad is yotze l'hira. So I want to tie it that the echad that's yotze l'hira is this one that's going to become about Ruach HaKodesh, and I'll show you from different Gemaras that this is what we're talking about. The this Ruach HaKodesh that we're talking about over here, it's not Ruach HaKodesh like he could see, that he, X-ray vision and is in touch with Malach, and it's not what we're talking about here, B'chlal. But it's a certain Das Torah, it's a certain Klarkat. The only thing he understands is Torah, so when he tells you something, he's going to be right, It's I saw somebody writing this once. This was a long time ago. I don't remember what the context was exactly. But he says, somebody that goes to school for 2 years, he gets a degree, and he has the right to argue against any Rav or any Rosh Hashiva who's been sitting and learning for the last 60, 70 years. You hope that somebody who's sitting and learning for 60, 70 years knows something. He doesn't have a degree, doesn't have a certificate that says, I graduated Talmudic studies from this and this institution. It doesn't matter. It's silly. A certificate, all it is a piece of paper. What do you know? What are you bringing to the table? Answer me Vegas Kasha. You can't tell me Pshat in the Gemara. Can't tell me Pshat in the Taisus. What's it worth? No, you have Chachma. I'm not saying that there's no Chachma here. It could be that there is Chachma, but the fact that you have a right to speak up against Talmidei Chachamim who are sitting and learning for 50, 60 years, you don't think that they're a little bit smart? You don't think they have a little bit more seichel in the pimple on their shoulders? I mean, come on, there's got to be something more. And it's interesting because there's when a person is able to connect himself and devote himself entirely to the Seichel Eliki, to the Seichel Elyon, he's going to have his knowledge that he's going to have. He's not book smart, he's not street smart, he has Das Elikim. It's a whole different ballgame, whole different ballpark. Rashi says, by the Mishkan, V'amali Yosei Ruach Elikim B'chachma B'tvuna B'das. What's Chachma? Chachma is Ma'asha Adam Shemei Dvar Me'acher V'lomad. Chachma is what he sits and he learns and he hears from other people and he understands what he's talking about. The basic information. B'tvuna is Maven Me'liba Mitech Dvarim Shalamad. He's able to shtel tzu and make connections between different things that he learned. And Das is Ruach HaKodesh. That's what Rashi says. Rashi says in Parshas Bereishis, Ve'ed Adam Eschaber Ishta, it's Lashon of Chibur. What's the Chibur over here? A Chibur here is the dveikus between the person and the Torah. When a person connects himself to the Torah properly. That's the highest level of dveikus b'Torah. And this nevuah, this madreg of nevuah that we're talking about, of Ruach HaKodesh, it's a Beferish Gemara. The Gemara darshans the pasuk in the Gemara Shabbos, darshans the pasuk ben v'yei al tereu. It's a pasuk in Tehillim we say in the davening, Elu Talmidei Chachamim. Nev'yei al tereu, don't shepherd a Nevi'im. That's a Talmidei Chacham. A Navi means to see something with a clarity. A Talmid Chacham sees something with clarity. That's the difference between a Talmid Chacham and somebody who's not. At the end of the day, what's the difference? You're both 75 years old. Was hast du getan in dein Leben? Was hast du getan in dein Leben? This guy sat and learned for 75 years. You're going to ask him a question, his answer is going to resonate with all kinds of sichlias. The other person, he has a lot of life experience. Someone's going to deny that Rabbi Yechon would stand up for an old guy. Right? But at the end of the day, the Torah is it's a shell. The Torah is lacking over there. It's missing. The Metzias of the Torah, the Dveikus b'Torah, the Neshama of the mensch is lacking in tremendous way if it's not full. If it's not full with Torah. And there's a Gemara Bava Basra, Daf Yud Beis, that we all know. The Kosh Baruch Hu took the nevuah from the prophets and he gave it to the Chachamim. And the Gemara says, "Atu Chacham lav navihu." Chacham can't be a navi. I mean, it's like if you're a Chacham, you can't be a navi. If you're a navi, you can't be a Chacham. So Rashi says, "The Ka'omar Mar Nitlam and V'yim and Nasal Chacham Echad Meikara Hasan Uvul Chachamim." It's making it sound like that. Meikara, there was no nevuah for Chachamim, and the Gemara answers, "Hachi Kamar." The Nevuah was taken away from the Nevi'im, but the Chachamim, they still hold on to their Chachma, they still retain their Chachma. The Hainu, that if you had somebody who has a madreg of Chachmas HaTorah, and with Hazak Klarkite, he's able to answer worldly questions based on his Yediyas HaTorah, based on his Dveikus HaTorah, Memela, that Chachma never left him, that Nevuah, we're calling it Nevuah, but that Nevuah never left him, that he's always holding on to. And the Ramban, it's a very famous Ramban over there, that Gemara Daf Yud Beis says that Nitla Nevuah min HaNeviim hu Amara v'Chazoin. The Nevuah b'Mara, the Nevuah v'Chazoin, the prophesizing in this sense, like the Rambam, the Rambam describes it, the person loses consciousness and falls on the floor and all kinds of things like that. That type of Nevuah doesn't exist anymore, but the person who has such clarity of mind and such purity of mind, it has to come at a certain level of kedusha v'tara, when a person has that, it's not tainted by this world. He's able to tap into Olamis and Hecher Madregas and Zachin that we have no shaykhs to, and he's going to be able to tell us was tutzach. You know. Aval nevuas hachachamim shu b'derech chachma loynitla. The nevuas hachachamim that comes from the derech hachachma of sitting and learning was never taken away. They know the truth from the Ruach HaKodesh that dwells within them. Like Rashi says in that Gemara, Svaras Halev Habole B'Nevuah. It's as far as Halev. It's as far as Halev. It's interesting that Rashi's pointing it towards the Lev as opposed to the Seichel. But Al Gapanim, sometimes it's like that also. I don't know, they have a hergish that this is the right thing. A person whose whole life he never has any netias towards anything else, and he tells you, I have a hergish that this is the right thing. That is the right thing. His heart is not telling him. If his gut is telling him something, that's also Torah. He's not going to make a mistake because of that. Of course, mistakes will happen. We spoke about that the other time, but that's the thing. And the Ritva says something very interesting, and this is l'chayra something that just adds a little bit to the whole pile of what we're saying over here. Sheyasigu b'sichlam dvarim harbe. They'll be able to understand with their seichel. They're able to be masik things in their seichel. Dvarim harbe, many things. She'ein koyach b'seichel ativi lahasigon. That through the natural chachma, through the natural hasagas, through the natural understanding of things, they won't be able to be masik. Meaning what? Meaning that if a person pushes himself to learn more than he physically can, which we know many people that do that, and they'll get to a madrega of understanding in Torah and understanding of things in general, hasagas that are a lot greater. You have to keep pushing, obviously in a healthy way, but once you keep doing this, then you could get to madregas. He says that olamayla b'seichel ativi lahasigon, she'ein koyach b'seichel ativi lahasigon. And after it's all said and done, when the person gets to this madrega, right? We said before that hatzlacha, it's like just lands on you, right? It's a Gemara. What does the Gemara say? Yagati matzasi is tamen, right? Meaning because even though a person was miyageya, everything he learned and everything he thought of on his own, right? A person could be thinking and trying to figure something out, and he's going through a certain cheshbon and he's going through some information in his head. Then all of a sudden something could just click, and then all the light bulbs go off and all the things start blinking and beeping, and out to get. He just figured it out. Everything just fell into place. Is that because I was etzemiyageya, or that's because something clicked? What does that clicking mean when that thing clicks? Is that yagia or that's haslacha? Now, once a person gets more into it, terasa imelasa b'makam acher, kipshuta you could learn on that Gemara, terasa imelasa b'makam acher, that when you have a lot of yediyas across the board, so even though you're learning Baba Kama, or you're learning Sanhedrin, or you're learning Navi, right, but you remember Sambesha Chachma and Parshas Truma. You also remember Kveger and Trumas, and you also remember what the Rash says in Kalim, and you'll chap, and you'll be able to, your Torah is not just limited to the page that you're learning right in front of you, but it's a melos of a makamacher, so tutzach and other places also, right? But it's more than that. It's really talking about the madregas that a person could be masik when he's learning. He's learning over here, but terasa mosav makam and hecher elamis. So tutzach over there, and that gives him siyata d'shmaya to be able to be masik, greater heights in learning and understand things more. And the to take this a step weiter, the Chesed LaAvram, who's the great grandfather of the Chidah, Rabbi Katz talks about him, I don't remember. But the Chesed LaAvram is a fascinating sefer. It's like the Hishtalshelus. It's like he goes through the Seder Olam, like the Hishtalshelus Hadaris. He goes through everything, and he explains the different madregas that this tikkun needs to happen by Noach, so that's why this happened. And he goes through the whole Seder Olam like that, and all kinds of fascinating stories, and a lot of things that we know, I think, come from him. That he's like a source for a lot of the stories and quote unquote midrashim. He's a source for a lot of it. But Al Kapanim, he writes, it's very hard to find things in the Sefer a lot of times because there's like Mayonis and Naharos and Nechalim, and it's broken down in many different pieces. They're just called different names. He writes like this: "V'inyan ki atayra hi etam ha'atzilus ruchnius elyon mispashet as hatachtoina v'asogas elikis." He says Torah is the blueprint and the DNA of the entirety of the Bria that was mispashet from the highest to the highest to bring it down to create this world. V'asogas elikis. This is being massacred Kodesh Baruch Hu. The greatest way to be able to be massacred something in the Tachtonim is only through Nevuah. The physical capacity of your brain can't be massacred unless you have a neshama. And even in your neshama would struggle to fully comprehend what's going on without an exposure to some kind of Nevuah. He says a very interesting thing. It's the Ger Kamasugis and Shas of Navi Sheker. Somebody were to deny or to disregard, in a sense, the Nevuah, as a Yakish Gam Divrei HaTorah. He's Memele being Makish Divrei Torah. Why is that? V'lochein Hoysa Haraya or Haria Harishayna Li Yisrael Me'akadosh Baruch Hu Ala Torah Hasagas HaNevuah Kulam Afilu Ktanim Shebe'iman Kanoida. It sounds like he's referring to Kriyas Yamsuf. That was the Nevuah that all Klal Yisrael saw. They said Zeh Keli Van Veu. They all pointed to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and they were able to see. Right? So what was that all about? The first Riyah, the first seeing that Klal Yisrael saw from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which, by the way, continues on. That Nevuah that they saw by Kriyas Yamsuf continues on to the Nevuah of Matan Torah. Matan Torah was Kulei Nevuah, right? Because they said they saw HaKadosh Baruch Hu Matan Torah, and they said, "Oh, we saw him Alayam, Hashem Ish Milchama." He was, he was like a youngster fighting a war, and then by Matan Torah it was Kazaki and Yeshiv Yeshiva. It was the same one. So that Rashi at the beginning of the Shira tells too that the Nevuah of what they saw by Kriyas Yamsuf and the Nevuah by Matan Torah was one long hemshech. So we see from here that the Nevuah brings proof to the Amitus HaTorah. And what's totally and what? Is the Torah totally in Nevuah, or Nevuah is totally in Torah? Nevuah is totally in Torah. Meaning, if a Navi is Machish, if you're Machish the Navi, you're Machish the Torah. It goes that way, not the other way around. And that's the Lashon of the Gemara. Because Chacham is the other from Navi. A Chacham is greater than a Navi. Right? Memela, because the Pasuk says, Navi Levav Chachma. The Chacham is greater. So minit lebemi avi omer katam begadol. The Mela, the Talmud Chacham is the Navi. V'loyoid, the Chacham is Aduf mi Navi. And a person can be zeichet to this al yedei learning Torah b'matorah hanirtzis. That's the lashon of the Bar Moshe. How he finishes off the shtickle. He says with the proper intentions, right, with the proper goals in mind. Now, we have a little bit more to go, but really, this is all going back to Leman Tazliach, Kios Tazliach, Dרכך V'Vos Tashkil. That's really where it's all going back on, because Tashkil is Nevuah, and that's the Tachshit. The Tachshit is the Pshat. It's the highest point of the crown. It's the Tachshit. It's the Spitz. The Spitz is when you're Isaac Batara to the point where your hasagas go far beyond the natural and human capacity of your brain. You have to understand the brain, as much as it could be masig, and as much haskala you could have in your brain, it's limited in a sense because it's still a physical organ. Now you get the neshama involved with it. The neshama is not something that has a limit to it. In a sense, it's limited by the guf, but in the seichel shabbat, it's not, right? But then there's madregas, and there's madregas of Ruach HaKodesh, there's madregas of Nevuah, that it could be masig hecher ezachim. And that's what, that's Kiyaz Tazliach Dרכך V'Vos Tashkil. That's the tachshit that we're talking about. So, how does a person get to Torah like this? How does it work? We all daven for all kinds of things, and we all want to get to great madregas. So let's go. What are you waiting for? Right? Let's take the magic pill. What's the magic pill? How do you do it? So first, I want to say it's a very, very famous vort from the Eglei Tal in Zakdama. The Eglei Tal was the, I wouldn't call him the Sachat Shavu Rebbe because I don't think that's who he really was. I think he was known as he was the son-in-law of the Kotzker, and he was He wrote, thousands of tshuvas, Avnei Nezer, and Eglei tells a sefer on going through the Lamed Hashmalach and Shabbos, with all kinds of alumnus, Polish, Geschmack of Polish alumnus, very different style than the yeshiva. I mean, he says a lot of the same Vertlach as others also, but his Lakdama is a very famous line that he says. I'm just going to read a few parts of it. I once we're on the topic, I want to mention something that I heard some people that are making a mistake, that are toyin midarech haseichel, they're going off the seicheliga path, the Indian limit at Torah Akdosha. V'omran, they say, ki aloi meidu mechadish chedushim misameach umisaneg bilimudai ein the limit at Torah kol kach lishma. A person who enjoys his learning, that's not Torah lishma because he's not doing l'shem mitzvah. He's having enjoyment. So he has like negias. He's involved in it. Kamayim hayaloi meidu b'pshita she'ein le me'alim l'shem tainug. It's much more lishma when you don't have any hana from what you're doing, right? If mitzvah's lavli hanas, you can't have hana from it. We're rak l'shem mitzvah, and he's only learning l'shem mitzvah. But lemidu misanig b'limuda reza misar b'limuda gam anas atzmai. A person who's learning and misanig b'limuda, he's mixing in some of his personal hana. And if you see that, I put that in bold dafka. Be'emes etos mafursim. Be'emes, this is a well-known mistake. So how do you do it? What's the idea? He continues and he says like this: "V'ader Rabba, because the ikar mitzvahs limud Torah. The ikar mitzvahs limud Torah is liyosas usameach umasanig b'limudai. That a person should rejoice and be happy and take pleasure in his limud. V'oz divrei Torah nevloin b'damai, because only then the Torah will be absorbed in his blood. Me'achar shenenim divrei Torah hu nasa dovak l'divrei Torah. How does a person become dovak in the Torah? By enjoying it. By enjoying it, that's how you become one with the Torah, right? And it's very interesting. It's a Gavaldige Zushtal, he brings a Rashi. It's an Edron took by Mishka V'schor, not to get into too many details of it, but it says, the lekot dibuk de mitach she'en ha'nishkav nena en enid bakimoy. It says, v'dovak b'ishtoi, right? V'loi b'schor, right? That's the Gemara's drasha. V'dovak b'ishtoi. When a person has dveikus the way he should have, so then, the person has hana. Dveikus means, true dveikus means both parties have hana. So whether that means ishvishtai, whether that means two people learning Torah together, right? And it could be just you and the Torah. Meaning that you have to have hana also. If you're not having hana, that means that there's a chisaron in the dveikus. That's what he says. So I wanted to still do something else. It says in this passage, Parashas Yisrael, B'chodesh hashlishi l'tzeis b'nei Yisrael me'eretz Mitzrayim, b'yoyim hazeh bo midbar Sinai. So Rashi says it was Rosh Chodesh. So lehaya tzarich lichtov ela b'yom hahu, ma'u b'yom hazeh. Why did the Torah write b'yom hazeh? So like Rashi, sheyiyu divrei Torah chadoshim alecha kilo yom nitnu. Torah should be new to you. When something's new, it's gishmak. When something's gishmak, you enjoy it. So kilo yom nitnu, kilo was given that day. So the Shem Shmuel, who's the son of Avnei Nezer, in this week's Parashas Yisrael, he brings from his father, he brings a maral about Esther and Achashverosh. He says that Achashverosh wanted to be Toyim Atam Besula. So the brings a maral. The maral says over there that when you're Toyim Atam, Atam means you want to see what it's about. You don't care for it. You're curious about it, so you want to be Toyim Atam Besula, Toyim Atam Beula, right? It means that if a person's Toyim something, that means he doesn't have a kinyan in it. It means that it's a kinyan. It means that it belongs to me. It's mine. It's personal to me. Time means that it's floating around. It's not something that I have shaykhs to. I'm going to have a shaykhs to. Person can have a tam ha-Torah because he doesn't have a kinyan in it yet, and it's too much for him. So he's not. There's two things when it comes to divrei Torah. Echad seder ha-Torah. One is the seder ha-Torah. The Torah tells you how to behave and what to do. How a person should behave and a person should act. The second thing is kedusha v'chiyus ukedusha v'eschachus shemaisefes la'adam eisik. There's a kedusha and a simcha and a eschachus and a eschazkus that the Torah comes with. Calls man a person is being Isaac about Torah. And he brings the Tanit V'Eliyahu that says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yeshev Kinegde V'Keira V'Shayni Imai, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu sits with you and reads with you and learns with you. And That's a very scary madrega, and is a very big thing, but it says that about everybody and every person that's learning Torah that Kosh Baruch Hu sits with you. And on the second madrega that we said, that this Kedusha Torah, and that the Kedusha gives chiyus, and brings the Simchas Torah. So that's a pshat in the bracha of Noisin Torah. Because really, a person could say that, if I can make bricks of Torah once, the question is like this: why do I have to make bricks of Torah every day? Make bricks of Torah once, and I'll learn a little bit today, a little bit tomorrow, right? What's the problem? I'll learn a little bit today, I'll learn a little bit tonight. Won't be a hefsek, make lumdish, right? Won't be a hefsek, and then tomorrow we can learn also. So why do you need to make a bracha every day? So according to this, if the Torah is chadasha, the Torah that we had yesterday is not the same Torah as today. You have to make a new bracha on that. Nice in a Torah, Chaim Kedovitz always says, nice in a Torah means it's constant. Kosh Baruch Hu is constantly renewing the Nesinas Torah. It's not the same Torah as before, right? If it would be the same Torah as before, I wouldn't have geschmack in it. It would be old. It means that it's every day I have to. The Torah itself rejuvenates. Not that I have to rejuvenate myself for the Torah, right? That's also true. But the Torah mitzad atzmai brings a rejuvenation to it. That's very interesting. They had a chap because the Gemara says in Saita Shema Yisrael Hayem Atem Bam L'Molchama. So the Gemara says that even if you only have the schus of Shema Yisrael, you'll be menatzech, and the Melchama you'll win the war. And the Gemara says machlokes. It's mitzvah l'galaisei la'amaretz, or it's asur l'galaisei la'amaretz. It's a mitzvah to tell the amaretz because Chad shall have the mitzvah of Krishma, or it's asur to tell the amaretz because really he would do a little more, but now he knows he could get away with even just saying Krishma alone, so that would be enough, right? He would be able to just a Krishma. But that's a pshat in the pasuk that the pasuk says v'gisa boy yoimam v'layla, not yoim v'layla. Because if we would just say yoim v'layla, I would think I could get away with just one day. One day would be good enough. One day in your life, you have to be Isaac B'Torah. Every other day, sleep. Eat, drink, be merry. No Isaac B'Torah, right? But the pshat is yoimam. There's lashon rabbim, so that means every day. So you have to be Isaac B'Torah every day, and that's why it's hayom. That's why it's Hayom Atem Bam Shema Yisrael Hayom Atem Bam L'Molchama. That it's a daily thing, so that's why you shouldn't tell the Amars. Fine, either way, that's why you'd have to make a new bracha every day. So he goes right and brings the Gemara Bava Metzia, also a famous Gemara Ama of the Haaretz of Shel Berach B'Torah Tchila. Why did Yisrael get destroyed? Why did the Beis Hamikdash get destroyed? Because they didn't make bricks of Torah first. So why didn't they make the kasha? Why Taka didn't they make a bracha? So everyone says a pshat, but he says like this. So he says, according to what we just said before, since they weren't connected, they weren't invested in it properly. Well, there's nothing new about it. It's the same Gemara than yesterday, the same Gemara than 2 days ago, and we're learning Ksubah stuff test for 3 weeks already. I don't need to make another bracha. It's old, it's stale, it's grumpy, it's not geschmack, right? So you don't make a bracha on it. So you can make a bracha on day one and never make a bracha again. If you look at the Torah like that, the Torah will be stale to you. The Torah will not have a hischachus. Really, I think the pshat is that how does the Torah get a hischachus? The Torah, it's a book on a shelf. It's a scroll in the ark. How do you make it? You're the neshama that connects to the Torah. That brings the chiyus to it. A book on a shelf is a beautiful thing. It's always saying it's the biggest masmid. It's always saying the same thing and never doesn't say that. Right? It doesn't help me. That's not a mitzvah. For me, the mitzvah Talmud Torah is that I should get this information in the book into my mind. Not only into my mind, into my heart, not only into my heart, but it should get into my entire system. My whole worldview should be because of what I'm reading from these books, what I'm learning from these books. They said it was like all one big thing. You make one bracha and that's it. There was no chiyus, there's no ischachos, there's no nothing. And here I thought this was Gishmak, because I want to tell you to what we're talking about, Eretz Yisrael. So he says like this: why did the land get destroyed? He says that Eretz Yisrael also needs a chiyus and a shteikus to it. When Eretz Yisrael has kedusha, we bring the kedusha to Eretz Yisrael. We bring the shteikus and the chiyus and the neshama, so to speak, of Eretz Yisrael. That's through us. It's through our Torah and our mitzvahs. Like I said before, it's more Torah than mitzvahs. But v'cheinu begashmius. That's what he says. She'eretz Yisrael tzmeo tamid lamayim. Eretz Yisrael constantly needs to be watered. K'moshe kosav haRamban. With Torah v'avoda b'chiyus rigshus hanefesh mamshechol gamken hashpois chadoshes b'chol eis. And by us pushing and getting involved in it, that's kiyuma shel haaretz, and that's that's going to be mechayev us. The our chiyus that we're putting in, that's going to be mechayev us to make another bracha every day. So that we're not invested and that we're not involved in being moishech la chiyus chadasha, and that's why Eretz Yisrael got destroyed because of that. Right? We spoke before that by Nachal. We said that the Eretz Yisrael was made up of the halachas that nishtach me'evlei shel Moshe. Fine, very interesting, because the man, which we're going to talk about in the next few psukim, the man fell every day. Meichet Hesi, right? It could have been that the man fell once and it lasted him for 40 years, right? The biggest klal of the Nachash is that he has his food wherever he goes. He never has to turn to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right? I think when it comes to Torah, I think it's the same thing. Every day we have a new Torah, and it's not the pshat that we turn to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We turn to HaKadosh Baruch Hu not in the sense of being mevakish, so to speak, that we need our food. The Torah is there. Torah menachas b'karen zavis. If anybody wants, they can come and take it. But it's really that we have to turn to ourselves inside and say, do we really want this? Are we interested in investing ourselves today in this program called Torah? And it's very interesting because the Medrash says that the man fell on, it fell, if you were tzaddik, it fell closer, you were Rosh, it fell further, but it says by Yeshua, it fell on him directly. He didn't have to do anything. It was like literally landed in his mouth. That's how connected he was, because he was connected to Moshe Rabbeinu. That was the Spitz Dveikus. And learn it not Torah la'ich le'hamon. Fine, and then really that's really what I wanted to share tonight. But there were a few other Gemaras just to mention when we were talking about before, that sometimes we'll try to learn and then it won't work, and then it will work, and then sometimes it won't work, right? So that's really what Rashi says in Megillah. Rashi says, the Gemara says, Amr Yitzchak, Yamel Chadim Yagativ Lematzasi Al Tamen, Le Yagati Matzasi Al Tamen, Yagati Matzasi Tamen, Hani Milu B'Divrei Torah. Avo B'Masu Matan Siatim and Shemaya. L'Divrei Torah LeAmarna L'Chdudev L'Ukmei Girsa Siatim and Shemaya. To be Meira Ha'ira L'Ukmei Girsa, that you need Siatim D'Shmaya. What does that mean, Siatim D'Shmaya? That Siatim D'Shmaya, that's what's going to get you to the Ruach HaKodesh, because when a person is involved in Torah the way it should be, Drachov Matzlichim Loi. A person learns and says, I'm done for the day. Person learns, 5 years in Kail, close the book. If that's the attitude, then you're not going to become a Meira Ha'ira. A Meira Ha'ira is not somebody who's passing a shalas. A Sukkah Shmata Libedel Hilchos means that a person is invested in learning to come out with the maskonas. He's invested in learning to try to understand, put together, tie all the loose ends together. Not just, okay, Yaitzit What are we walking away with? Right? So, although there are times when it seem like it's not like that, but Rashi says over there in Megillah that sometimes it doesn't work. That's what we were saying before. That sometimes a person will have atzlacha in the learning, sometimes a person will not have atzlacha in the learning. And really, what does Rashi say? It's a Gemara Avodah Zarah. Rashi says in Avodah Zarah of Zion that if a person forgets his learning, you should have kavan in the bracha of Chen Hadas. It's a skula from Rashi. It works. Right? One of the Rebbeim, was arguing with a bacher about something. Didn't like what the bacher said, so he yelled at him. He told him, "Have more kavan in Chen Hadas." You know what he's talking about. But that's a pshat in this whole business over here of Tצליח דרכך was Tashkil, and that's the tachshit. The tachshit is if you daven for it, and if you harv on it, and you're miyageya, and you work on it, and you're really motivated to come out with something. You're not motivated because your Rebbe said it's a nice thing, and you're motivated because you really want to learn the Dvar Hashem, and you enjoy it. Really, the bottom line is, if you enjoy it, you're good. It doesn't matter who, what, where, when. Any other details is also superfluous. It doesn't matter. The Ikar is like Tavnei Nezis says. The Simcha, the Tainug, that's where it's at. If that's not where it's at, there's something wrong. I can't explain it to you. Or, Pshat is, you didn't get there yet. Now, most Chevra, Mesif the age fellows and Bismedrash fellows, many of them, they're not holding by this madreg of the Sasan and the Simcha of the Torah yet. They just didn't get it yet. I also think it very much depends on what your sviva is and who you grew up around. If you see people constantly learning with a geshmak, at least convince yourself that it's geshmak, even if it's not, and then eventually you'll get there. Right? I think that works. I hope it works. So, hatzlacha to everyone in their learning, and that's it. Ad kana maisa.